Namaste and welcome to the Bharatvaarta podcast. Tamil Nadu goes to polls in a couple of weeks' time, and for the last 50 years, the state's politics has been dominated by the DMK and AIADMK, which is, of course, the ruling party currently. But a lot has changed over the last few years. The DMK and AIADMK have lost their tallest leaders, both Mr. M Karunanidhi and Ms. Jayalalithaa no more. And also we have a bunch of new entrants in the mix, like cine star Kamal Hassan and AIADMK leader Shashikala's nephew, TTV Dhinakaran, who has since formed the AIADMK party. So to make sense of it all and really understand where the wind is blowing, I have someone who follows this stuff very closely. Prasanna Vishwanathan is the CEO of Swarajya Magazine, which is one of the most popular digital media outlets in the country. He's also, most importantly, he is from Tamil Nadu, so he has his ear to the ground. So without further ado, welcome Prasanna. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Roshan. It's my pleasure and privilege joining you for this episode of Bharatvaarta. And I think probably we spoke. You featured me in one of your episodes, maybe 6 months back, and I just need to tell at the outset that you guys have done a phenomenal job, and the kind of eclectic topics that you cover across business, technology, public policy, politics. It's been a fabulous. It's actually a must listen on my playlist, and I really consider it my privilege to be a part of this show today. Thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you so much, Prasanna. Very kind words from you. And of course, all of this is possible because of love and support from the likes of you, right? So thank you again. Very good note to start the podcast on, I would say. Let's begin with some opening comments. When you look at the environment right now in Tamil Nadu, how will you summarize what we're seeing right now?
Okay. Couple of caveats upfront, okay, Roshan. Though I've kind of been away from. I grew up in. I was born, and of course, I grew up in Chennai. So I've not been in living in Tamil Nadu since 2004. Of course, I have a family there. My father lives there. So, and of course, today with all those various media outlets, TV, you kind of tend to get a sense of what is happening politically. So, honestly, I've not made any ground visits. So any of the opinions that I'm going to share during the rest of the podcast, I just need to put that caveat up front. Okay. So I've not really met anyone. Of course, I've spoken to a lot of people who are involved in the election process, psephologically or in terms of strategizing and in terms of, communication and all that. But I have not, I wouldn't claim that I've kind of gone to the ground and, felt the pulse of the people and all that stuff. So, you should cut that much slack for me.
Sure.
So broadly
you can, no, I was going to say you can base all of this on your best second-hand sources. So.
No, actually, quite a few people who I know of and who I respect a lot. They've been following this election closely. Some of them even actively involved in electioneering strategies as well. So I think I kind of can give a decent second-hand understanding of how the situation is unfolding. So from the big picture, Roshan, actually, as you rightly pointed out, this is probably the second election. Second election in the sense that you had a 2019 parliamentary election that happened, and now probably this is the first assembly election which is happening in the absence of those two stalwarts or illustrious leaders who kind of dominated the Tamil political landscape for almost, I would say, 25 to 27 years, actually, Jayalalithaa and then Karunanidhi. So 2019 election might be the first time where we could. The essential point here is that all the previous assembly elections, since Jayalalithaa emerged as a challenger post MGR, which was the 1989 election, and then we have had subsequently 6-7 elections. Okay, all that necessarily will not provide any template. Of course, it's of academic interest in terms of looking at how the previous elections unfolded. But I think this will be maybe 2019 can be a template that we could look at and kind of ascertain how the trends have changed or decipher how, any kind of political landscape has shifted and all that. So basically, let's look at what happened in Tamil Nadu in 2019. Okay, so in 2019 election, I mean, as I used to tell to some of my friends, is that India had two elections actually. One election which happened in rest of India, and one election that essentially happened in Tamil Nadu. So of course, maybe Punjab could be another exception, but it's just even there, I think actually BJP didn't do that badly. They won 3 out of the 5 that they contested in alliance with Akali. So Tamil Nadu was probably the only big state where they essentially received a huge drubbing. Okay. So in 2019 election, so Tamil Nadu has 234 assembly segments, so which kind of translates to 39 Lok Sabha seats. So you have like 6 assembly seats per parliamentary constituency. So I just did some, I just went through some election polling data of 2019. So DMK and its alliance, so I think there was a 6-7 party alliance, essentially DMK, Congress, Communist Party of India, Marxist Communist Party of India, and 2-3 other political parties. MDMK, there was a Amma Makkal Munnetra, and there was also another caste-based formation by an education entrepreneur from Tamil Nadu called IJK. But all others contested essentially as in the DMK symbol. So out of the 234 assembly segments in the 39 Lok Sabha seats in Tamil Nadu, DMK and its allies took a lead of almost 223 seats actually. So basically ADMK and the alliance, the other side, which is ADMK, BJP, PMK, Vijaykanth's DMDK, they took leads probably around 9 to 11. So that was the nature of the sweep that we witnessed in Tamil Nadu, where DMK alliance like almost won 38 of the 39. There was like a lone seat that Paneer Selvam's, the former CM, who typically used to keep the seat warm for Jayalalithaa whenever she had to face the court action and go to the jail. His son won from their traditional stronghold in Madurai district. I mean, Theni, rather. So other than that, it was a virtual decimation, okay? But there was also something else which happened at the same time, which did not garner as much attention as it should have, ideally. There was a poll of around, I think, 23 to 24 assembly elections, by-elections, which happened essentially because the Speaker of the Tamil Nadu Assembly had disqualified the legislators who, owed allegiance to TTV Dhinakaran, who you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. So they were basically the personal loyalist of TTV Dhinakaran. And so since they shifted allegiance, they attracted the provisions of the anti-defection law and they were disqualified. And this 22 to 23 election pretty much determined the fate of Palanisami's continuance as the chief minister. And this by-election was quite interesting because it was even Stevens actually, despite the fact that DMK's humongous victory in the parliamentary election. The by-elections that happened to those 23 seats was like a 11-12 kind of a split, okay? And Edappadi Palanisamy was able to retain his government because he was able to manage those 11 election victories. So fundamentally, I think like that also kind of leads us to the next point that I wanted to make is that, see, as you made this point that since 89 onwards, with Jayalalithaa and Karunanidhi, both had kind of emerged as almost like a messiah-like figures for their followers, like basically everything good and everything bad that happened to the state, and also the entire party structure, the way in which the culture of sycophancy, the entire model used to be revolved around these two personalities actually, and who had definitely built a larger than life perspective. So the Tamil people alternatively used to either shower extraordinary love on them or used to vilify and hate them actually. So you had this cyclical shift in the government till Jayalalithaa was able to retain the power for once in 2016, albeit very narrowly actually. So this, with the departure of these two stalwarts from the electoral scene, essentially the Tamil people were looking for one kind of a person or a particular individual to whom they can, transfer all their, the typical thing. And unfortunately, I think the only larger than life political person in the Indian landscape at that point of time, because, either Edappadi Panichami, Stalin was fairly a long timer in politics, but he had always been in the shadows of his dad, actually. So he was just, not that, certainly didn't enjoy the stature of these two leaders, actually. So, so Modi kind of became the, that person to whom the transference of all these, everything wrong that happened in Tamil Nadu was done, and it was a very successfully executed a project. Of course, there were also social, economic related issues which kind of may have helped BJP in the north, west of India, and also even in east, but kind of went against it in Tamil Nadu. For example, if you look at demonetization in the rest of the states, it was hugely popular, or even if there was some, disillusionment, it kind of went away by the time the national election had occurred, right? In fact, it was politically beneficial for Modi. And even GST, if you really look at it, of course, there were urban centers like Surat, etc., where, Modi took the call that he's going to implement it, despite the fact that it is going to be a attack on the informal nature of enterprises that dot the, some of the industrial and economic pockets of India. But of course, Gujarat being Modi's state, I think they managed to it. So Tamil Nadu, I think, was one state which couldn't reconcile to the formalization of the economy that happened, actually. And, that was a big setback for BJP, because actually speaking, in 2014 Lok Sabha election, when Jayalalithaa was at the height of her political glory, after having swept the 2011 election, and of course relatively weakened DMK also fought in the 2014 election. Actually, there was a third front which was formed by BJP, which had PMK, MDMK, and few others, which actually performed very credibly. In fact, BJP won one seat all by itself as a third force in Tamil Nadu, one Lok Sabha seat. And they also narrowly lost Coimbatore Lok Sabha seat, which would have been a prestigious win, because that's typically a ADMK bastion, and BJP actually beating DMK and ADMK to win in Coimbatore would have been like... So 2014, I think there was a positive, I would not call a groundswell, but I think like there wasn't this kind of hate that happened, that kind of manifested in the 2019 elections against BJP. So there were many reasons that happened. Like I said, one was basically, since these two figures went away, I think that Modi became that fulcrum, or the, the epitome of all. Two was the economic factors, and three was the two issues, which basically, I'm just making the last point here, is basically, Jallikattu and this NEET. These two issues almost became a mass movement. And it's little unfortunate. Of course, we are people who are engaged with politics very closely, I mean, in the sense as observers very closely. But both were basically legacy issues that preceded the Modi regime. Like for example, NEET was something that came up during the UPA era and then stuck down by the Supreme Court, and again, Supreme Court reinstated it. So basically, there was nothing much a government which inherited a NEET had to do, but it was again turned into a assault on Tamil Nadu's educational autonomy because there were a whole lot of education and political entrepreneurship in Tamil Nadu is like very intricately interlinked. And the other thing was about the Jallikattu. Again, like it was basically actually a Tamil Nadu Supreme Court judge who unilaterally, while hearing some other case, banned Jallikattu actually. And then, Jairam Ramesh, who's from our good old maybe I think he's from your neighboring district, probably. He was the most vociferous opponent of Jallikattu, and he pretty much, in his environmental zeal, he almost imagined himself as the great environmental warrior, and he's the one who banned Jallikattu. And then throughout 2011 to 16, Jayalalithaa was like virtually, because of her health and all, it was a completely indifferent, very lackadaisical government that was there in Tamil Nadu, who kind of, was smartly using, not doing anything. So all those things exploded and kind of, destroyed, decimated BJP, and consequently ADMK, which was seen as the quote unquote a lackey of the Modi government. And of course, the central BJP played a significant role in the emergence of Edappadi as a political figure. And last point is that, but after 2019 till 2021, which we are talking about like almost 2 years, there has been a significant shift where Edappadi himself has asserted and emerged as a leader in his own rights. Of course, I wouldn't say that, he enjoys the ADMK is a very founder-centric, charisma-led kind of a party, but I think Edappadi is not reached that level stature. But I think like there is a great deal of acknowledgement in Tamil Nadu that Edappadi is you were talking about very low base and expectation, and he's really outdone and really phenomenally. I mean, as you might be knowing, either whether it's in the management of Corona or coronavirus management, or even in terms of some of the floods that hit Chennai, and overall governance, delivery of welfare, which I think is almost now party neutral in Tamil Nadu. I think like even tomorrow if DMK comes, I'm sure they'll be able to deliver the welfare at a certain level. But somewhere in the Tamil mind, welfare is still kind of associated with MGR ADMK legacy. So ADMK kind of gains based on it, and Edappadi did a good job of doing that. So I think like I don't know like how significant. I think there is still significant groundswell of anger against BJP, but I don't think so it is as big as a factor in 2019, because this is a state election. And of course, Edappadi has emerged as a stronger figure. So when you compare 2019 versus 2021, I don't think so it is going to be a repeat of 2019. So this is I don't know whether ADMK has done well enough to, kind of retain power. I have my doubts on it, but I think it's not going to be a repeat of 2019. So that's the kind of, I just wanted to give a quick context of,
right,
some bit of how the electoral phenomenon and various factors at play actually.
Right. That's a fantastic summary, Prasanna. Thank you so much. Couple of things I want to drill down on. One is you mentioned this political vacuum, right, with the passing of Ms. Jayalalithaa and Mr. Karunanidhi. And it's very interesting that you say that this vacuum was filled by someone like Prime Minister Modi, whose party does not have a significant base in the state. And plus, as you rightly mentioned, demonetization and its impact, all of those things. And just curious, why did it not flow towards some of the existing leaders, like let's say Stalin, or even Kamal Hassan, or any of the other breakout factions as such?
See, why it didn't flow to Stalin is one, because they were not in power. Okay, and obviously the people in power get disproportionate, face the disproportionate consequences, and of course Stalin is a very interesting figure in the sense that he while he's a subject of ridicule and meme making in the Tamil social media, especially among the opponents, he is not a very forceful or a powerful personality. Like, for instance, Mr. Karunanidhi had a very acerbic articulation skills. Actually, he could make like very snide and very hurtful remarks against his political opponents, or even sometimes his own political friends. Actually, so he had a way of affecting existing friendships because of his the way in which he's. Stalin comes across as a slightly more grounded and like you can't like instantly hate him kind of a person. He's not like that strong personality who invokes extreme emotions actually. So that might be the reason why. Though there have been several fiasco during his speeches, and he seemed like little underprepared all the time, and doesn't seem to be on top, because like the Karunanidhi and Jayalalithaa seem to be like general gold standards in terms of their public performance and delivery, and Stalin doesn't measure up to that. But that also helps him in the fact that he doesn't become like a a personification or like a person who can, like I said, Tamil people alternatively used to love or loathe Jaya or thing. So this guy Stalin doesn't invoke that level of negative emotions actually, and of course Modi also had a larger than life presence, and there is always this Tamil exceptionalism undercurrent, which is I would not call it an undercurrent. It's been a defining feature of the Tamil politics actually, and so and also the though the Dravidian narrative presents as if all the media is controlled by the so-called upper caste Brahminical forces, as they like to call, and attribute all conspiracies in the world to them. Actually, both the television as well as the digital media in Tamil Nadu is dominated very strongly by say the people who largely identify with the Periyarist ideology or the Dravidian ideology, or even increasingly the Tamil nationalist ideology, which is a connected but a substrand of the Dravidian ideology, and now almost opposed to the Dravidian ideology. So they also had the ability to create a very powerful narrative against the prime minister, because they had the complete dominance of the local media, and all this, as the television channels, and a lot of television channels in Tamil Nadu are also owned by education entrepreneurs. Okay, so they were able to use an issue like NEET and make it as if like NEET is a conspiracy to end reservation. NEET is a conspiracy to assault on the educational autonomy of Tamil Nadu and all that stuff. While there was no evidence that before NEET, poor students from government schools, or even socially, poor people from socially, quote unquote, the backward communities were affected because of NEET came actually. So anyway, about the way in which the Tamil Nadu is a unique state with 69% reservation, and probably almost 90 to 95% of the community, the social groups in Tamil Nadu are almost eligible for some kind of reservation actually. So the open category is probably the lowest in the entire country actually. So it didn't change anything much, the NEET, except that it had an exam which was probably not aligned to the state syllabus, which had got diluted over years because of the easy grading system that they had followed in Tamil Nadu. So a lot of factors combined, and they were able to make Modi as that that one evil person who's sitting 24/7 in Delhi and conspiring how to screw Tamil Nadu. That's almost the narrative that they managed to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So, even after the consolidation in the by-elections, as you mentioned, there is a sort of a perceived sentiment that people are unhappy with the AIADMK government. You might have touched upon it lightly in the opening remarks, but do you want to delve upon this slightly more?
I think 10 years, even like a popular leader like Shivraj Singh Chauhan, or even like say Sheila Dikshit in Delhi, after 15 years, they faced a certain anti-incumbency, and 10 years actually in the second term, if you really look at ADMK's first term, the 2011 to 16, when Jayalalithaa was ruling, it was actually almost I don't know, maybe a lot of my friends or even the ADMK supporters might not agree on it. It was a very lackluster rule. I think she was not keeping the best of health. Might be that is one of the reasons. She was completely inaccessible, and probably 6 months in a year, she used to go to her retreat in the Nilgiris to recuperate or whatever actually. And virtually, all central schemes, even after the Modi government came to power, and there was a general perception that Modi and Jayalalithaa had a relatively decent personal equation. But after 2014, in fact, the ADMK government had deliberately stonewalled so many initiatives. Actually, for instance, they didn't cooperate on passing a Jallikattu, thing. Though the anyway, see, for the central BJP, it was not a big issue. For them, it's more the initiative would have to have come from the state. Need she was opposed to, which is okay, fine. I think like almost national highway projects, there was this power sector reforms. I don't think so she signed up for anything. And that kind of reflected in the 2016 election where AIADMK won very narrowly, actually. See, this is despite the fact that in 2014 election, DMK was decimated. The third front led by BJP did relatively well, but AIADMK won 37 of the 39 seats. But within 2 years, the election became so close. In fact, I think that was the closest election in Tamil Nadu's history. The 2000, I think there was just 1% vote separating the DMK front and AIADMK front, and in almost, I think, 16 seats, the winner was decided by less than 1,000 votes. Actually, Tamil Nadu has never witnessed that level of close election, at least in the last 40 years. Okay, so the overall governance till 2014, and then that after Jayalalithaa died, there was this power struggle. Sashikala was there, and then Central Palanisamy was initially, all those intrigues happened, and then Palanisamy finally emerged as his man. But I think he took like a year or so to consolidate himself in the power structure. That he comes from a relatively socially powerful community in Tamil Nadu, which has good presence in the entrepreneurship, in the local bureaucracy, at least in certain parts of the state. All that helped him to consolidate. But I think like from 2019 to 21 is if you look at this 10 years of AIADMK rule, I think the best period of governance, in my personal opinion, was 2019 to 21. I mean, and there are enough evidence and data to prove that. I mean, you would have seen the number of manufacturing companies, EV manufacturing, so much FDIs that were attracted even during the lockdown period and all, despite the fact that 2017 and 18 was almost a washout because of so many protests. Like you would have followed, right? Like there was virtually protest every day in Tamil Nadu. There was like, there was a protest against the DMK protested against the projects that they were claiming credit, and they were instrumental for good reasons. They bought it to Tamil Nadu. They themselves turned against it and all that stuff. So I think like out of this 10 years, the good governance was only between 19 to 21. So, if you look at net, people still think that 10 years is like probably we have given them enough time. So maybe there is a time for a cyclical change in the government. That might be one reason. Second reason is, I think also, I think the magnitude of defeat was so enormous in 2019 that retrieving the lost ground is actually an Herculean task. In fact, and also because of the split in the party. See, essentially, from the time Jayalalithaa took over and consolidated the party became centric around two large communities in Tamil Nadu, actually. One in Western Tamil Nadu, which is the Kongu Vellalar Governors, actually, which kind of 3-4 big districts of Tamil Nadu, which is called the Kongu Nadu, so around 40 to 50 assembly seats. And then there is a very powerful community called the Mukkulathurs, also commonly called as Tevers. So this two community, and essentially also because of MGR's legacy, AIADMK is also seen as that proletariat party, the party of the last, man on the street, the small man, or whatever you call it, that kind of thing always used to give that incremental vote. But in terms of party structure, in terms of the ministerial composition, in terms of the ecosystem that subsist, it essentially drew from these two communities, actually. But with TTV Dhinakaran led attrition, split, I think that Mukkulathur community, there might be a reasonable attrition of votes. I don't think so. The entire Mukkulathur community is going to rally behind TTV, because still AIADMK has retained several local ministers and very powerful MLAs who belong to this particular community. So it's not like they completely lost the vote, though because of EPS coming from the Kongu Vellalar community, there is a perception that the party might party is kind of very centric on a particular community, but ADMK party structure remains intact even in large parts of southern Tamil Nadu. Okay, so other reason I say is that, like, even with Jayalalithaa at her most powerful height of a political power, despite that, the way ADMK won in 2016 was like a very narrow victory actually. But if you look at another 5 years plus attrition of some social groups, plus a bit of anti-incumbency, and very BJP is a net negative for ADMK in Tamil Nadu. I mean, I think that's pretty much clear, borne out through various surveys and all that stuff actually. So if you put all this together, I think like that's why it creates a perception that ADMK might be on its way out actually.
Right. Actually, I was going to ask you that in terms of the alliance itself, you think it'll work because the BJP has, of course, the central, there's a lot of effort to sort of focus on the Tamil Nadu voters. You saw Prime Minister Modi himself quoting a Tamil poet and so on, right? And so, I mean, will the alliance really work on the ground? And B, on that related note, why has BJP found it so hard to break into Tamil Nadu?
See, I think of course, I think it's a combination of reasons. Okay, I mean, I spoke about the recent things, which is basically the narrative that was built against the central BJP, and the economic the way, say, demo. See, and also the other thing is that the BJP's victory in 2019 was largely based on the enormous welfare delivery that happened in the Hindi heartland states, and also of course Western India has a element of infrastructure and all that stuff, and East was an aspirational vote for BJP, so it kind of combined. But if you really look at a state like Tamil Nadu, right, some of the things that Modi delivered on such a scale, like say toilets, LPG, houses for poor, I mean, enormous. I think there are independent scholarly works that have, recognized the level at which these kind of welfare delivery happen. But that is something that, you have to give credit to the administrators and politicians in Tamil Nadu, the Dravidian parties largely. Some of these needs have been already taken care and delivered. So, basically, unless like you're a, quote unquote, a nationalist who thinks that eventually, overall progress of India will also benefit the progress of Tamil Nadu, you could be taken in by the rhetoric that, all these welfare deliveries and, the highway constructions, expressway constructions, which are largely happening elsewhere. And of course, when it was offered to Tamil Nadu, there were protests that nobody is going to talk about. But I think like the entire governance model was probably something that, Tamil Nadu had already achieved. That's my personal thesis. Okay, so that, and also, the local Tamil Nadu BJP, even preceding the days of Modi. In fact, I think Modi was like one chance where they could break the perception of BJP in Tamil Nadu as a a party that is largely catering to the sensibility of two castes. Like basically, there were two communities that BJP was essentially identified with in Tamil Nadu, which is like the Brahmins, and then there is this Hindu Nadars actually. So other than that, BJP was largely seen as that kind of a North Indian Hindi imposing kind of a party. And because of the fact that, a lot of state BJP leaders were from, say, the Brahmin community, actually there was a perception that, it's a kind of an upper caste, Sanskritized, Brahminical party actually. So to some extent, there was an opportunity that Modi could break this mold. But unfortunately, it didn't happen in the sense that, but I think, and also I think at one point of time, BJP itself, I think between 2017 to 19, kind of decided that it will back Edappadi, and then I think even the Prime Minister or even the President, they didn't even, Tamil Nadu didn't even come in the political trajectory, and they could win such a sweeping majority without, bothering about Tamil Nadu, quote unquote. But after 2019, I think like they kind of sense that why is this particular state alone not being amenable to our, electoral outreach? And there was a slight period of 6 months where, like you said, you would have noticed where there was a concerted effort to kind of, break into Tamil Nadu. But I think the what do you call, the aggregation of negativity that has happened in the last 3-4 years, plus the historical antipathy to BJP because of perception. Some might be because it could be true. I don't know. All this combined, and it almost makes it like a a liability for AIADMK itself, especially given that EPS was asserting himself and he was gaining a bit of attraction. So I think overall they then probably decided to de-escalate and play second fiddle to EPS, because ultimately I think their calculation is that the Sashikala part of AIADMK, the TTV Sashikala part of the AIADMK, is more Congress leaning. Okay, so that they, I think, fear a scenario where there is a potential opportunity for Congress to emerge in Tamil Nadu if there is an alignment between the TTV faction and of the AIADMK and the Congress. And of course, Congress is like a very interesting phenomenon in Tamil Nadu. It has basically no no workers, no party organization worth it. But it is like a kind of what I call it as the a vote magnet for the minorities. See, Tamil Nadu has 15 to 18% minorities. Like, of course, in Tamil Nadu, you always have to, you'll have a disputed counting of the Christians, because, like a lot of them might not be a vote because they kind of lose out on the benefits and all that. So, but broadly speaking, I'm not on the side of those who claim there are 35% and all that. So largely, if you look at the minority population, which is like Muslims plus Christians, would be around 20. And Congress kind of works like a vote magnet for these. Like, see, for example, they might, even without Congress, DMK might be in a position to attract these voters because they are seen as the strong force. But with Congress, it is, if you ally with the Congress, it's ensured that this 20% is going to en masse vote for whoever Congress is allying with. Okay, so BJP doesn't bring any such strength to any of the two Dravidian parties in Tamil Nadu. To some extent, there is a, I wouldn't, it's more a social media amplification, but I think there is a certain level of Hindu consciousness that are already emerged in certain pockets. Nagarkovil, for example, the Kanyakumari district, and it was emerging very strongly in the Kungu belt also. But the one challenge is that, like, that also is AIADMK's stronghold actually. So beyond a point, BJP can't challenge, especially if it is also looking at a political strategy where AIADMK is its ally. So it kind of, de-escalates there as well. So it doesn't bring anything to the table from a social mobilization perspective, other than, some, I would put their organic vote bank in Tamil Nadu at, like, say 3 to 4.5% actually. That's what it adds. But, this 20% voters belonging to the minority community will not vote. So you're kind of a net negative of -16 or -17 to begin with, and I think, like, maybe BJP realized that it takes like another 3-4 election cycles in Tamil Nadu. See, if you really look at 2011 election, the same cycle of 4 states, BJP was a non-contender in any of the states, Kerala, Assam, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu. I think, like, probably they won 11 seats put together in these 4 states. Maybe in Assam they won 11. I think in West Bengal maybe 1 they won. So in 2016, if you look at, I think they largely focused on Assam. So, they mobilized in Assam. 2021, you're looking at both Assam and Bengal as a prospect. So maybe in 2026, I don't know whether it's Kerala, which will probably be their thing. I would think that Tamil Nadu will not be even up for grabs for BJP in 2026, unless, like, they are able to do the Karnataka model, where the Janata Dal, which was the primary opposition to the Congress, was slowly assimilated into the BJP fold. But even that took, I think, 10 years, right? Probably 2 election cycles. I think, like, first they had to ally with Hegde, lose 1 election, and then in the next election, I think still they lost, and then only in 2008 they could come to power, actually. So that process, I think, is like 15 years away, is my sense. And of course they have to stay the course, and there are so many other imponderables. But I think if I were Prime Minister Modi's or BJP's strategist, and nobody asks me anything on this, but I would say that, I think they should really not this unrequited love where you said, like, quoting Thiruvalluvar and all that stuff. I think, like, I think it is probably not going to happen anything soon in the next 1 decade at least, actually. That's my sense.
Right. Yeah, very interesting points that you bring up, right? That the society is so stratified, and the caste lines are so sort of ossified in that sense that they're even willing to vote across religious lines in some sense, right? Because right. And since you mentioned the Kanyakumari, the Kanyakumari as such, there's a bipole schedule there. Any quick comments on that?
Oh, actually, you know what? The sitting BJP has won that seat twice, okay? One in, or thrice, I think, 98, 99 and 2014. So basically it won in 2014 essentially because it was a 5-way fight. Okay, BJP fought separately, DMK fought separately, Congress fought separately, AIADMK had its own candidate. So the BJP's vote bank there is around 35 to 40%. 35 on a very when it's an a very bad electoral performance, and probably it swells to 40 when it is a good performance. Okay, and that's the kind of upper limit that it can hit, actually. Okay, so in 2014 there was a 5-way split. So I think Ponnar almost won with like more than 1 lakh margin. And so whenever they ally, whenever there is a good alliance between DMK Congress, like in 2014, there was a DMK Congress Communist Alliance, which got repeated as well in 2009. Ponnar couldn't win, actually. But it's a huge, see, let's be very honest about it. It's completely religious polarization that happens because Ponnar was an exceptional local member of parliament, actually, like, between 2014 and 19, did enormous work. And he was initially in the Ministry of Finance, and later he was a ministry in the North, the road ministry. So almost like he could get several highway projects done in that particular district. I think there's a very good route, Nagarkovil Trivandrum highway, and there was like 4 flyovers that he built in the Kanyakumari district through 3-4 towns. Generally acknowledged that he was a extremely good MP, actually. But there is an enormous counter mobilization by the church which happens, actually, and in fact, I think it's pretty open knowledge that the Sunday that precedes the date of polling, I think there is almost a quote unquote religious diktat by the church, and which is a very powerful community there. I mean, powerfully organized local church structures are there, which determine the outcome. And typically, I don't think so this time, with Congress still being in alliance with DMK. And interestingly, Congress has also fielded a Hindu Nadar candidate who's actually the son of the businessmen. I don't know whether you know this very famous group, which I think also has presence in our city, Bangalore, called the Vasant and Co. Who do the
Yeah, of course, the electronic
so
shops.
the founder of that that group was the one who was the MP who passed away unfortunately during the corona, and his son is contesting, and so that's an Hindu Nadar. So in that way, even if Congress had or any other party had fielded a Christian Nadar, then maybe all the Hindu Nadar votes would have essentially accrued to to Pon Radhakrishnan, which is also not going to happen because the Congress guys will also take away some part of the Hindu vote actually. So I think I'll be very surprised if Ponar wins. I hope he wins. I mean, not because it is BJP doesn't need that one MP, I would think, in Lok Sabha. But I think if it is going to be purely on voters genuinely voting on secular lines, wanting a MP who can actually get things done, who can be accessible, who can fight for the fishermen rights, who can actually bring in some infrastructure projects and all that, it has to be Ponar. But the so-called communal party delivering on secular issues is not going to win. So that's how it is actually.
Right. So, there are several smaller parties in the fray as well. And of course, I mean, you have Kamal Hassan's Makkal Munnetra Maiam as well. Quickly, if you can cover what impact they will have on this election.
Actually, you know what, though I have no opinion on Kamal Hassan as a actor, and of course I have to be truthful. I have deep disdain for his pseudo-intellectual pretensions. So I was pretty much thinking that such a frivolous guy, politically speaking, nobody knows what is his party, Makkal Munnetra Kazhagam, what is its ideology, what is it, thing. He's kind of like a very, say Periyarist meets, I don't know what is his ideology. He talks Periyarism, he talks feminism, he talks communism, he talks, he talks all this, and despite that, the Periyarists dismiss him as a Brahminical stooge, which is a different, discussion altogether. So I was pretty surprised by his performance in the 2019 Lok Sabha election. I think almost won 6% vote, and disproportionately those votes were won in 3/4 urban centers, like for instance Coimbatore, almost 1.6 lakh votes, South Chennai again 1.4 1.5 lakh votes. So I had actually challenged, I think that was the only election bet that I lost in 2019. I had predicted 39-0 for DMK Alliance. It was 38-1, but still I think close enough for a good prediction. But I had told that this guy won't get even more than 1% vote, but he surprised thing. So you see, actually in Tamil Nadu, right, despite the fact that there are two Dravidian parties, there is this 20 to 25% vote, which is for a untested third front. Vijaykanth was getting that votes in 2006 and 2011. Okay. BJP-led alliance got that in 2014. They almost polled 23% vote as the third front actually. 2016 was the only time where there was a fiasco for the third force largely. There was a very powerful third force which was formed for the 2016 assembly election, but they couldn't gather momentum because it was more a opportunistic gang up and all that. So there is always this 20 to 25% voters in Tamil Nadu who want to kind of try some new party. It kind of comprises of all these urban voters, who are not actively engaged in politics, for whom this just okay, let me try Kamal, let me try this. So I think this time also I would not be surprised if this M&M gets some 5 to 7% type of vote. And then there is one other interesting phenomenon, a politician in Tamil Nadu called Seeman, who runs this party called Nam Tamidar Katchi, who has a very interesting ideology, which is like basically he says that he even discredits the Dravidian movement, and he kind of advocates Tamil nationalism actually. So in his contention, Dravidian movement has been foisted on Tamil people by Telugu elite, Malayali elite, and maybe even Kannada elite actually. I mean, it will be a surprise to you. So there's like always this thing about Periyar being a Telugu or a some people say he's a Kannada, though I think he's a Telugu. So this Dravidian movement, he dismisses it as a movement that is essentially a landed elite of the linguistic minorities who have used Tamil people to sustain their political privileges and all that. So that is his ideology. So he say like when you talk about large Dravidianism, it kind of includes entire South India, but none of the other states in South India want any of this Dravidianism. So his view is that let's call ourselves Tamils and focus on a version of Tamil nationalism. He was a kind of a film director. I don't think so he made any very great memorable movies, but he's a interesting orator. He marries it with a bit of what I call as the Luddite environmentalism, where 5,000 years back Tamils lived in this great beautiful landscape where everything was available, like you could pluck the fruits from the trees and drink water from the stream, and that kind of a he paints this beautiful Luddite kind of a thing, which is in today's age when a lot of these urban not even in bit like Kejriwal, how he appealed, because once you're disconnected urbanite, you want to be a part of a cause that is larger than you, and this kind of appeals to you. So he caters to this constituency, and initially he was an atheist, and then he collaborated actually with a very famous, very notorious pastor who's a very influential figure in Tamil politics, and later had a fallout with him. And then he also brought in this element of Tamil natural religion foisted against the Hindu religion, so that there is a Tamil Murugan. So he kind of made Murugan into a Tamil god versus the rest of the Hindu god pantheon, and that also appealed to some people. So it's a very interesting thing, but he's never and he's very powerful on social media actually. I think even as any speech of his will not garner less than say 5 lakh views on YouTube. He's like a real YouTube phenomenon, but it's not translated that much as the thing. But I think he's going to be around in the sense that he offers a cohesive counter to the Dravidian movement, but the chauvinism and fascism is also even terrifying for people who might otherwise vote for Dravidian movement, because at the end of the day, enjoying a speech plus voting electoral choices, and also a lot of electoral choices in Tamil Nadu are determined by the party's ability to mobilize and pay money as well. So maybe people listen to him but don't vote for him. He might garner around 5-6% or even more. So these are the two. TTV Dhinakaran, I think I don't know, he's kind of taken a strategic retreat in this election. So I think he's now, his entire politics is based on the premise that AIADMK will lose this election, and then it will be up for grabs post the election, and so he could take over it. So I think he's playing second fiddle. I mean, in fact, I don't think so. He's even campaigning vigorously, or maybe the media doesn't cover. I'm not sure, but there are. I think he is in the one constituency there where he is fighting. There is he's in the reckoning. He might win because there are some local social factors that might support him. So these are the large three parties, and I think Vijaykanth party this time is allied with TTV. And anyway, that's I think almost Vijaykanth he was a good guy, but unfortunately, I think like now the party is pretty much a fiefdom of his wife and his brother-in-law, and I think it's basically, I don't know why it exists is what most people think. So I think like other players, largely Kamal Hassan in urban areas. So you have to look out for Kamal's performance in Chennai and Coimbatore, and maybe some areas outside Chennai and all. And Seaman would be in contention in, let's say, to gain around 5 to 7 to 8%. So you're almost looking at 20%, which will be garnered by these kind of parties, which
the smaller
always
parties.
have a thing. Yeah.
Right. So another issue also is the Devendra Kula Vellalar issue, right? So the central government went on a limb to legislate this caste consolidation and reclassification in the middle of the elections. What do you see as the impact of this?
See, I not sure how. See, there was this. It's a slightly complicated issue, though for people outside it might look like a nomenclature, and in fact, as you might know, this is like possibly the only case. I don't remember anywhere else in India where a community which is currently classified as scheduled caste or thing, they wanted themselves to be either notified into the MBC group, or so it's basically you're giving up your reservation privilege to some extent actually. See, the problem with any Dalit centric politics in Tamil Nadu is that, or for matter, though there is a very strong element of caste that happens in caste, and caste determines voting to some extent, but I think purely caste-centric approach in a Tamil Nadu context, is always like faces the danger of powerful counter mobilizations from other communities. Actually, more so if it is a Dalit-centric politics. Like for example, there are 3 large Dalit communities in Tamil Nadu. One, which is probably around 60% of the scheduled caste in Tamil Nadu, is called the Parayar community, which is largely dominating in the northern parts of Tamil Nadu, some in center, and then this Devendra Kula Vellalars are more in the southern part of Tamil Nadu, and then in the Coimbatore and Kongu belt there is a community called Arundhathiya. So these are the large 3 Dalit communities. There are few smaller ones, but these are the large 3. But from a numerically significant one, the Parayars and Pallars are the most significant one. So any party, right, actually, which kind of focuses on a caste-centric model has the enormous counter mobilization happens actually. Like for example, in northern Tamil Nadu, there is a party called the Patali Makkal Kachhi, which is also again a caste-centric party, which is almost in conflict with another Dalit party, because those 2 communities, the Vanyas and the Parayas, they live in the same. I mean, they are essentially in the same part of Tamil Nadu. Numerically, they exist in the same part of Tamil Nadu. So there is always a conflict. So it's always a challenge for the mainstream Dravidian parties that, like, if you ally with them, then you face the danger of the other caste counter mobilizing actually. So I think like in southern Tamil Nadu, because of this Devendra Kula issue, there might be some marginal gains for the AIADMK front, which could offset, like I said, because of the TTV factor, they might lose some Mukkulathur votes actually. So to that extent, if it is able to, the Devendra Kula Vellalar vote, if they can compensate to some extent, they may be competitive in few seats in South Tamil Nadu. More than that, I don't think so. There is going to be big issue. See, actually, South Tamil Nadu, which is like Madurai and down south up till Kanyakumari, is like almost 70 seats, I think. And I think this time DMK alliance is well placed there, actually, according to me. But there are some constituencies, individual constituencies where AIADMK has some very powerful heavyweights who are contesting ministers, like 4-time MLAs and all that. So if this Devendra Kula Vellalar issue has some net positive for them, they can probably, compensate the TTV factor by gaining this vote. And I think otherwise, the party which fought for this Devendra Kula Vellalar reclassification, it's not even allying with the NDA, despite the fact that BJP and later AIADMK championed their cause. The original party of the Pallars, which is the party of Dr. Krishnasamy, they are in fact contesting alone in 60 seats actually, which itself shows that, like the Dalit politics in Tamil Nadu is like the Dravidian parties have to play it very carefully actually. So, I don't see it as a big election issue. So I think like the real impact we might get only through the post-poll analysis. I don't think so. Okay. It has kind of emerged as a big issue. I think everybody is currently interested in underplaying it actually.
Right. Okay. Final question to you, Prasanna. If gun to your head, what do you think will the seat predictions be like? I mean, I know it's a tough thing. We've had a very nuanced conversation up until now. Right now, I'm asking you to pick these numbers and so on. And also, if you could justify these numbers as well, right? With why you think this will happen, and what will the main issues be? That would be really helpful.
See, I think my sense is that much like in 2019 election, as I said, there were 2 elections in India, one in Tamil Nadu and one in the rest of India. My suspicion is that a similar phenomenon is unfolding in Tamil Nadu, where there is one election in the Kongu belt, which is like almost 48 to 50 seats, versus another kind of election in the rest of Tamil Nadu actually. So, because even the current surveys are almost predicting AIADMK's vote share as 10% more in Kongu region, while in like say in a place like Chennai, they are showing that AIADMK is trailing by even 15% actually. 15% in the context of Tamil Nadu is like a 2 horse race is like a virtual sweep actually. So there might be some regional, nuances in the overall way in which the elections are going to unfold. Okay, if you ask me to put a number, let me. But you shouldn't replay this clip actually. Okay, later.
No, nobody is picking up on a bet or anything. Don't worry.
My sense is that 160 for the DMK alliance and probably 70 to 75 for the 70 for the AIADMK alliance, and if currently there's no wave, so in Tamil Nadu actually the last 1 week becomes very critical. One is like probably the last mile money distribution by the parties actually that can sway the voters in some constituencies where the election is very tough. One. And also, there's other possibility where if people sense that a certain front is winning, they might want to probably vote for the, the winning formulation, okay, the winning front or the perceived winning front. So my thing as things stands now, I think like 160 for the AIADMK front and like say 70 for the 160 for the DMK front and 70 for the AIADMK front actually. So I think it is very difficult for AIADMK to recover the lost grounds, especially if you are using 2019 Lok Sabha election as the benchmark, and still that undercurrent. Of course, the anger is against BJP is not like what it was in 2019 in Tamil Nadu, but see, it is like the bogey of BJP is kept alive by the section of Tamil media actually continuing to keep, though it is a very marginal marginal political force in Tamil Nadu, they have created this bogey, and I think that might have some net impact on AIADMK's performance as well. So my sense is like 160-80. I mean, 160-70 is my take.
All right. So, Prasanna, this has been a very, very nuanced conversation, as I mentioned. A lot of underlying machinations, all of these things were brought to the fore. Thank you so much for all of the insights that you've shared with us on this podcast. And
as
hopefully we'll do a follow-up.
Roshan, it was my pleasure and privilege. And, you guys at Bharatvaarta have been doing a fabulous job. And, I don't remember any of the episodes that I've missed, all fantastic conversations, and genuinely honored to be part of this episode. Thank you so much, Roshan.
Thank you so much, Prasanna. Thank you again for all of the kind words. And talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Bharatvaarta podcast. If you want to see more content like this, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We started Bharatvaarta to facilitate long-form discussions on politics, policy, and culture. We don't necessarily endorse anything that was said in this episode. If you wish to offer us feedback, do reach out to us on social media. We are at Bharatvaarta on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You could also get in touch with us on our website, www.bharatvaarta.in. The links are in the description below. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.